Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Good Stuff. Always appreciate you spending some time with us. Venturing back into the world of women's basketball today. I know we've had a couple coaches on. Really looking forward to this guest. First, just want to remind everybody to head on over to Good Stuff with Kevin on YouTube and subscribe to our channel. But without further ado, from a mutual friend who is her husband, we have on the head women's basketball coach at Bowling Green State University, Robyn Fralick. Robyn, it's great to have you.
Kevin, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's good catching up and talking about some of the commonalities here. I'm just anxious to know, like, how are things right now, as a coach, not being in that world? Like, what is your role? Is it more basketball or less basketball than it's ever been before? Or how are things just going? Just give us a little bit of insight into that, if you would.
Yeah, it's such a unique time. And I think right now what I'm learning in the position I'm in is it's leadership, because there's so many things that are unpredictable for us. There's so many things that are unpredictable for our student athletes. And, two of the qualities that I feel like have really emerged from this are adaptability and creativity. I feel like you've got to think outside the box, and then the adaptability piece is every day. I mean, every day you just have to be ready for new news or, an update or a change. And those things are challenging, but I think during this time, what I've learned the most is just be a great communicator, be really, really transparent, and make sure your kids just feel informed and prepared for the consistent unexpected.
Yeah, boy, that's so good. You say some really key words there, and I think that's important as a leader. So what are some ways you're doing that? Like what are some ways you're adapting, and what are some ways that you're maybe communicating differently than you did before? Because these are all good things for people to hear in a leadership role, because if we're all vulnerable here and transparent, we're probably all struggling with some of those things at times, and looking for ways to better. So what would you say to the people that are listening in that area?
Zoom has been a great tool. I don't think anything ever replaces face-to-face communication, but for right now, that's been something we've really leaned on just to make sure that we can get everybody in the same spot and get the same lens of communication. And then find creative ways. Things are open. Golf courses are open. You can sit outside 6 feet apart. So finding ways to connect with your staff too, I think has been really important outside of phone calls and Zoom. And then just trying to, anytime I get new information, I'm just trying to do a good job of making sure everybody is updated, because there are a whole chain of people involved every time we get new updates, and I want people to make sure they feel informed. So those have been some ways. I mean, recruiting's had to be more creative too, because we can't have visits, we can't do in-home visits. Typically, the month of July we're out recruiting, so we're seeing them in person. So that too, our staff has really kind of put our heads together and found some ways that how can we really depict and tell people about our program with a Zoom call. And so
Right.
that there's parts of that that's been fun, because we've had to think of things we've never had to think of before.
Yeah, that's great. And I don't know about you, but I literally just told somebody earlier this morning, I'm a proactive person, not a reactive, but we've become so reactive because we don't know what tomorrow brings, and that's tough, right?
It is.
Let's talk a little bit. Let's just backtrack a little bit before we get into some of the Bowling Green stuff. Let's talk about with you being an assistant. Obviously, you're a part of a really good program. You guys won a national championship when you were there, or as the associate head coach, you were national championship runner-up. How did that role and working for Sue prepare you to be a head coach?
Well, Coach Ramsey in the world of coaching she's just so different, and I feel really grateful that I worked for somebody who operates a little bit probably outside of the prototypical coach. She's always in a good mood. Like I love to say, you can't steal her joy, and in coaching, that's pretty unique.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she loves her kids. Her greatest joys, and still to this day, I mean, she's been retired. She's going to be the first one to send you a card, for weddings, babies, anything, and she does that with our kids too. So I just saw, I was fortunate to work with somebody who was just so invested. She was just so webbed into the lives of her athletes, not only when they played, but afterwards. So I feel like I just I saw coaching through a different lens. I saw coaching through somebody who loved what they did, and always glass half full, and was just so intertwined. She really got the investment piece, and she got the joy of that investment piece even after they graduated. So those were things that, to me, make her legendary, and I also think were a big part of her success.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and I'm sure as you have moved on and created your own program, obviously with your own ideas and all that, but she's definitely left an impact on you that leaves an impact on your program now for sure, I bet.
Oh yeah, forever. She's left an impact on me, my family. She's so, even to this day. I mean, I feel like she sends us anniversary cards. Like sometimes Tim and I forget it's our anniversary. She doesn't. She
Right.
doesn't. She doesn't forget anything.
That's great. Let's talk about Ashland. I mean, I know you might deflect to this, but 3 years as head coach, you win 104 games and you lose three.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just for the record, I've lost three in a week numerous times, so I don't even know how to comprehend this. It's mind-boggling to me. You're 61-1 in the league. 37-0 at one point, national champs the second year. Of course, you lose the third year. Like, I don't. How is that possible? Like, how do you explain that to others like myself, who coached for 20 years, and I just have so much respect for that and what you did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't. When I can look back on it with a different lens now, which I think has been, it's been really cool to be able to do that. And it was just the perfect combination of things coming together. We had great players. I mean, great players. So as a coach, that's usually a good start, right? You have great
Right.
players. That's usually, so that's step one. And then they were great humans. So we had this great mix of great players that were great humans that really believed in being part of a team, really believed in competing. They were great students. So it was like all these positive things lining up. And then with those things are in place, you can get consistency, you can have high expectations, the competitiveness was really high because they could compete against each other every day. So it was just, and we kept things really small. I mean, all we focused on was what was right in front of us. It's like, okay, how do we get better? And that's so cliche, and you hear that all the time, but we really did it. So we weren't caught up. The outside world, there's a lot of noise around the win streak and points scored, and we just stayed out of that. The phrase we used all the time was "stay in the huddle." We're just going to stay in the huddle, because from my experience, when you don't stay in the huddle, or when outside people get in the huddle, that could be parents or fans or whatever that may be, it's really hard to stay good, because people wiggle their way into the huddle that aren't helping the huddle. So that group, they did all those things, and they did them every day, and that just allowed us to continue to compete and perform at a high level. But I think back about that team, I mean, winning's really fun, but I could have practiced with that team forever. To me, that's a real indicator as a coach that you've got a good thing going, because if we had 10 years of practice with that group, I would be thrilled.
Yeah, that's difficult to find, the ability to walk into the gym every day and everybody enjoy what you're doing and be on the same page. And you said something I know I said as a coach all the time: ignore the noise, ignore the noise. Outside of this locker room, there's noise. You mentioned it, parents, other people, whatever it might be. And it is so cliche to stay in that huddle. Do you attribute that to your leadership? Do you attribute that to the good human beings that you had on the team? Is it just a blend or a mix of that? Like, how can people get to that in their business or with their teams that they're coaching?
Mm-hmm. I think it was a good mix of our staff. Like Carrie Pickens is now the head coach at Ashland, and she's one of the best players to ever play at Ashland during the history of D2 basketball. So I was fortunate to coach her, work with her, and now she's taken over the program and done a good job. So I felt like our staff had that, and I believe you can only have an expectation of your team having that if your staff has it. So it started there. We were really together. We were really locked into the same pursuit. And then we could model that. And then we had kids who got it. Like our senior leadership that year was outstanding. So many things that came up were taken care of before we even had to know about it, which to me is they could really manage themselves. They could go in the gym without us and be awesome, right? They could go in the gym and shoot and do things that made them better. So they weren't relying on somebody to tell them what to do or how to do it. They had that within themselves.
Yeah.
So that was a big piece of it. But I also think as a staff, there was nobody on our staff posturing or trying to be more important, or, you find that it was like we were on the same page with what we wanted, and it allowed our team to do that too.
Yeah, and so I think you obviously created that culture, but it's that old cliche once again too, like good teams coaches lead, great teams players lead, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's so funny. You'll appreciate. I was 25 years old when I was a head coach and thought I knew everything and knew nothing, right? But like I asked one guy who was a mentor. I said, "Man, what's it take? What do I need here? I'll do whatever." And he said, "Well, 90% of it's recruiting. You got to have good players." And I got that, but it took even some time. And I said, "Well, what about the other 10%?" He said, scheduling. If there's anybody on your schedule you can't beat, get them off. So true, right?
Good advice.
Yeah, right. So none of it had to do with coaching, I guess. But and I got to know, like, what was it like? What was it like after those 3 losses? Of course, one might be considered a little bit more epic, if you will, because it was in the national championship game. But when you win 197% of the time,
Yeah.
what is it like after those 3 losses when you don't experience quote unquote failure in the win-loss column as much?
Oh, I mean, they were all so different. I'm trying to think back. Like, 2 of them were my first year, and I mean, those were disappointing. And I felt like the losses happened not only because of performance, but I felt like you look back, and I think we had some things that just team things that we needed to be better at. But then you learn, and so then that second year we went undefeated because I felt like some of the things that when you're in your own way, that gets harder. And I felt like those 2 losses my first year, I felt like we were in our own way.
Interesting.
And then the national championship game, I mean, that game to me, I mean, sometimes you have a bad night. I mean, I feel like we picked a bad night to have a bad night, but there's nothing that I can pinpoint other than we got beat. It wasn't like we weren't in our own way at that time.
Right.
I mean, totally disappointing, but the reality is, after we won the national championship my second year, and then after we lost it my third year, I still woke up the next morning and, my 2-year-old needed her diapers changed, and there was laundry to do, and there was groceries to buy. And I mean, it was fleeting both ways. So, I'm grateful that I've had the experience of both, because neither changed my life.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to transition to Bowling Green, but I would love to know, because you just brought it up, like that balance. When I was 25, I wasn't married yet, got married 3 years later, and that gave me that second role, right? I was coach and I was husband. When I added parent to the mix, that was a struggle, and there's a lot of people that I think are in that world. Like, how are you able to wear those different hats and be successful at those?
Well, first of all, I mean, I have an awesome husband, and he played college basketball, and he coached college basketball, and coached high school basketball. So he understands, he completely understands the time commitment. He's in it with me,
Yeah,
he's
right.
just as into the team and the program as I am. He's at every game. He's somebody I can share with, and he can understand it in a real way. So that's part of it. And then the other piece, and I talk about this a lot, being a mom. Right now Will's 7, Claire is going to be 4 in a month, and so much is talked about work-life balance. But in our family, we talk about work-life integration, because the reality is my job is not separate from my life. It's not. My kids are in the gym with me. I bring them on road trips as much as I can. I mean, my son loves basketball. My husband's, he's still teaching basketball. So I'm grateful that we've been able to sort of just put it together, because if I tried to keep those separate, there's so much time I would miss for both. So the integration piece for our family has worked well.
Yeah, that's great. How's Tim doing with the caddy? And I've seen some pictures on Facebook. Our oldest is in 8th grade golfing, so I love it going to all those matches. But I might have to ask him about some caddy tips, huh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Will has really gotten into golf during this pandemic, and we got a lot of emotions. So we are working through those.
Yeah, our oldest does not, and then our middle one takes after me like that. And they literally were last night in our kitchen making fun of what dad looks like on the golf course when there's a triple bogey or all this. I didn't know they were. I didn't even know they saw it. So now I feel bad, but it was kind of comical. But man, there's nothing worse as much as this as a coach and just person. I'm sure failure is so good for them, but man, as a parent, it's the worst thing in the world to watch, right? I mean, it's
Oh
it's tough
yeah.
to see it. Yeah.
But golf's great
Um,
for that because there's no one who
oh,
can bail you out of it. So you gotta get some resilience.
yeah, amen. I say that all the time because our oldest will deflect a lot. He'll be the fourth or fifth guy in basketball, but he can't hide when he hits that ball in the woods. He's got to figure it out. So let's talk about your transition to Bowling Green. Just completed your second year. Um, I guess my first question is, why Bowling Green? And then my second question would be just what are some of the biggest differences to you that stick out, whether it's the program right now, whether it's the level, whatever it might be. So start with kind of the why and then feed into that if you would.
So why Bowling Green? Well, there were a lot of factors. One, I had been at Ashland for 10 years, and you at some point I think you can get to a crossroads of like, okay, either let's stay here and stay awesome, or let's find a new challenge. And I felt like I was at that crossroads of like, okay, the new challenge piece, our family felt ready for. Um, Another part is it just made sense. I've been in Ohio 10 years. The recruiting piece, I think Ohio's loaded with basketball, is an area I was really comfortable with. So to be able to transition, I did feel comfortable and confident that, okay, Ohio's an area that I can recruit. And then the tradition, at Ashland, our fans were amazing, and you get used to that. You get really used to people caring about women's basketball. And if you come to a Bowling Green women's basketball game, I mean, our fans are incredible. They love women's basketball, and a big piece of that is the tradition. There was such a high tradition here for so long; it was sustained for so long. And so you come here, and they love women's basketball, and it's interesting because once you've experienced it, you want that. That not only as a coach, but for your student athletes. And then the other piece was our family. Tim and I's family all lives within a 2-hour radius. So that piece was a real bonus of having
Yeah.
grandma and grandpas and cousins and
Right.
a lot of people around. But and ultimately it was a place we believed in. When we came here, we felt like it had all the resources and tradition and the school. All those things were in place that we felt like, man, this is a place that we can believe in, and it's a place that I would have high. I believe our student athletes experience can be really high level here.
Right. And so that second part, like what have you noticed in terms of differences? Is there anything that sticks out to you?
I mean, it's really competitive. I mean, the MAC is a very high level women's basketball league. There's really good coaches.
Yeah.
There's really high level players. So that is elevated. Um, the recruiting's more competitive because, the best players are being recruited by a lot of schools. So those are probably the two biggest things. But that's the point. That was the challenge too, is like, okay, there's better coaching, better players, recruiting's more of a challenge. Like, okay, these are things that we wanted the challenge of that.
Now this might be somewhat of an obvious question, and I don't know if people would, be sensitive and asking, but I guess I got to know from the outside looking
Yeah.
in, like, what's it like for you going from what you were a part of at Ashland
Yeah.
to now coming to Bowling Green, where now you're experiencing losing more than winning? Like, how has that been for you personally?
I mean, it's a big challenge. But it's just a part of me, you know, the reason I didn't coach at Ashland because we won a lot, right?
Right, right.
I loved coaching at Ashland because I love the kids, and that doesn't change. Whether you're winning a lot or rebuilding, that doesn't change. So I think it just reinforces why you coach. Because if you only coach to win a lot, or you only coach, like, there's never enough wins. There's
That's
always
right.
too many losses, right? There's never an end point to either of those, right? Even the 3 losses felt like too many losses. So there's
Yeah.
just the end point will never, I can never get in front of it. So I think it just reinforces why you coach. And, it's been really fun watching things change. We've seen a ton of things change behind the scenes. For example, our team GPA, I mean, we just finished sixth in the country in team GPA. And when I got here, we weren't going to be in the top 25. So we've seen a lot of small victories. And I think as a coach, that part's really rewarding too.
So I'd be curious to know, just in general, what has failure taught you, whether it's been as a person, or I know you were a good player, as a coach now that technically, outside, once again, they see that only in the left and right hand column. Like you said, if your GPA was 2.6 right now, I know you'd see that as a failure, obviously, but what has it taught you as a leader over time? And I'm going to only ask this because I think I know what the answer will be. Why do you embrace it so much? Why do you enjoy it?
Yeah. I've resilience. I feel like in my first 2 years here, I've learned a lot about resilience. You get up. I mean, we had this past season, we lost 5 overtime games. I mean, I can't remember. We lost 10 games by like 5 or less points. So but that was a lot better than the year before. Right. So you learn to look through a different lens. I think you learn to, you got to stay with it. I always say there's no fast way to being great. I mean, even at Ashland, it wasn't like one day we woke up and we're great. It was just a lot of great decisions stacked on top of each other over a long period of time. And then suddenly, everyone wants to know the secret. Well, there's no secret. It was years of consistent good decisions and consistent work. So it's a good reminder of that. Like, there's not a magic wand. It's this sort of daily resilience, and you stick with the plan. You stay the course through the highs and lows. And what we did with our team this year, we actually gave them a hammer, everybody a little hammer. And there's that analogy of the stone cutter, right? Eventually, if you keep hammering away, the rock breaks. Now, I can't promise you when the rock will break, but I can promise you if you keep hammering long enough, eventually it does. So that's the same mantra our staff has been rallying around.
Well, I'm only laughing because I feel like I'm looking in a mirror with a lot more hair, but I would say that was my whole thing, the stone cutter. I love what you're saying, and if I've said it on here once, I've probably said it 100 times. Like, with 3 boys now, it is, it's faith and it's family and it's all those. But like, if the one thing as a parent I'm trying to impart into our kids every day is resiliency. I mean, it is so. And I think now the older I get, I was just so young and naive earlier. I'd get knocked down, I'd get back up. Now I get knocked down and I try to learn, and then I get back up, and that daily discipline that you're talking about, there's just so few people that are able to do that. And that's what allows success to sustain. I think there's no secret, like you said, hey, here's what it takes, but are you able to sustain it? So I think that's great. And you can see those small increments within your program. So when you're building this program, Robyn, like what are the things you're looking to establish, and how do you go about that, especially when it comes to building a staff and recruiting? There's coaches, once again, but business leaders that I think can really take what you're about to say to heart and implement that into their world, if you will.
Yeah, there's 2 things that stand out to me when I think of that. One is people. I mean, you always pick people, right? People, I think that I think experience can be very overrated in regards to picking the right people, because the right people, even with less experience, can learn, and if you've got people who are committed, invested, loyal, willing to learn, you've got some great things. And it's the same. I think that with a staff, and I think that with recruiting, you've got to pick people, and you've got to pick people who operate at a high level. And so that's step 1. And then step 2 is our core values in our program. I love to say they're not wallpaper. They are talked about and lived every day. They're in our offices, they're in our locker room, and they are talked about every day in our huddle, our end of the year evaluations. I ask my staff and our team, like, rate yourself on these, because we're constantly in pursuit of being better in them. And there's no end point to them. So those are the 2 things that I think for an organization or a team have been really important. You pick the right people, and there are also people that have to love those core values, right. and it's okay if you don't. Like
Yeah,
not
yeah.
everybody is, whether it's a staff member or a player, are going to love those. And if you don't, it's okay, but this isn't the right place for you. And so I think that begins to filter itself too. You don't want to be for everybody. And I mean that in a great way, right?
Hmm.
You want like people who see those and believe in them and will live them and love them. Okay, now you've got a common pursuit.
Yeah, that's awesome. I totally subscribe to that. It's almost like in the sales world, I think what you would be saying, it's like if I'm trying to hire, this sales guy, he is really, really good at what he does, but a bad person, bad fit, or he's really, really, he's just okay or bad, but a great fit. I'd almost prefer the latter because I can work with that person, right? Is that kind of where
Mhm.
you're going with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And people that are all in will figure it out, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So, what's the most difficult thing about creating your culture? Like you talk about these games that you went through, you lose these games. I've been there, done that. Like that's tough, right?
Yeah.
But yet you're seeing improvement in that. Like you've got to have that vision, and you've got to continue to create that buy-in when people don't get instant gratification. So, what's the most difficult thing that you see when it comes to creating that?
um consistency, doing it regardless of result, you know, getting people to continue to do it regardless of result. And you said this with the instant gratification. I mean, I call it, Google culture, like, right, everything
Yeah,
is
right.
like, but the reality is nothing that is actually sustainable is done quickly,
Yeah.
right? You think of the best things in life, whether it's love or great friendships, none of them are fast. And, I think as a staff, we just kept messaging the same thing. And the reality is we could lose and play really well. This
Yep.
past
Yep.
year, there were times where that happened. So we as a staff had to make sure we were continuing to evaluate based on that. But it's every day and it takes time.
Yeah. What about you personally here as we wrap up and get into rapid fire? I'm always anxious to hear like habits or things that drive you. Where are you at when it comes to all that?
Habits and things that drive me.
Hmm.
Um, well, I love working out. So that for me is really important for just my daily discipline, my headspace. One thing that the pandemic has taught me that I'm going to for sure be better at when we get on the other side of this is making sure I carve out time with my family and undistracted time with my family. So,
Yeah.
being home for dinner every night has been amazing. And it's something I hadn't known was amazing because I hadn't had that experience. So that is
Yeah.
something that I feel really committed to moving forward. So those are two things. And then, when I think of my job, I mean, I really do feel a commitment every day to the people, in preparing and planning. So those would be things um, that I feel I'm thinking of daily. Those are things.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good. Good. I like it. Hopefully, Tim's become a better cook, though. As a result of all that, right?
He's a great cook. He is.
There you go. There you go. Well, hey, we're going to do a rapid fire to finish. I call this three pointers, obviously the hoops reference, and I know you're a good player, so I'm going to dish off to you and let you knock them down here. You'll be able to handle this with no problem.
All right.
And you take your time if you need to. But
Okay.
number one, if people could learn one thing from this talk, like a takeaway, what would you want it to be?
Pick good people.
Good, like it.
Mhm.
Second one, if Robyn can come over here and step into Kevin's shoes and ask Robyn a question, what question would have you asked that I did not ask today?
You've asked a lot of good questions, so let me think about
Yeah.
that. What would you do if you didn't coach?
Oh, nice. Care to share or not?
Yeah. Are you going to answer?
No, no. I'm asking you.
Uh,
What would you do if you didn't coach? Do
what
you
would,
know or?
I think I'd love being a professor.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
Mhm.
Good. At Bowling Green, right?
Of course.
Yeah. Well, hey, good stuff is the name of this. What's some good stuff you can leave us with? Anything you feel is appropriate for this time or just in general, give us some good stuff.
Well, I think during this time, particular time in our country, the good stuff I can leave you with is stay faithful, stay patient, continue to lean into things that make you feel alive because this has been a really challenging time. But just some positivity to stay faithful.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. That is good stuff. Well, how about if the team wants to check in on you, if the team wants to, or I'm sorry, excuse me, the viewers want to check in on you, the team, where can they do that? Where's the best place to find you and the team, if you will?
Well, I am on Twitter. I think it's at Coach Fralick. And then we have a BGSU WBB Twitter as well. And I don't have Instagram or any of that stuff, but I know our team does. So not sure of our team's Instagram name, but I know we're on there.
Well, I'm also the dinosaur there, and don't get on Instagram as much. But the viewers will definitely tag you on Twitter and Facebook here moving forward. Hey, I just want to thank you a ton for coming on here, Robyn. I wish you all the best, and I'll be rooting you on. If I'm being honest, though, like I told you, I can't root against OU, as you know. Bob's my buddy, so. But no, I got to cheer for him when they play you. Hopefully, I can make one of those games. But thank you for making the time. I appreciate all your insight today.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
And I'll try to look you up the classic in the country. We can have some noodles and mashed potatoes together.
And some fried pies.
There you go. Yeah, this is true. Well, hey, I just want to thank Robyn again today. This was great. You can see why she's been so successful in her teams, and that will continue to follow here at Bowling Green, and look forward to hearing ways that this message will be applicable to you. So stay in touch and keep us posted. Till next time, good stuff.